lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and with me today, I have an awesome guest. I have writer Kelly Thompson. She's been killing it on everything she's been doing lately. Huge fan of your work, and it's a pleasure to. The second time we're talking, but first time, actually not via email. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So I always like to do this. I know we did this in our written interview. But for, maybe people that didn't get a chance to read that, I always like to ask, kind of what's your your secret origin, right? Like how you got into comic books as a fan, and then in turn, what made you want to jump into the creative side of it?
Sure. So I think I have two origin stories that are both important in their own ways. The first one is when I was really young, I used to beg my mom for Archie comics that were just at the grocery store, like at the checkout line. And I was young enough, and that was all I was reading as far as comics. So I don't tend to think of it as my real entree into becoming a super comic book fan who went to the shop every week and got a pull and did all that stuff, because I didn't really know that world existed. But I do think it's important because, especially as a creator and as someone who's written about comics a lot for a while, it's amazing what a inborn skill or early life learned skill comics is. And people who don't have that moment, I feel like really sometimes very few people get it if they didn't get it when they were little, if they didn't get sort of indoctrinated into comics. So those Archies, even though I didn't understand that whole wider world of comics, they were integral in making me understand the medium and it becoming sort of second nature to me. I almost think about it as a little bit like being able to read a second language, a very easy one. It took very little training and was all enjoyable, as opposed to the other languages I've tried to learn and been terrible at. But I think it's important. I mean, when I was later writing about comics for She Has No Head, I did a couple comics experiments where I would mail comics to people who didn't really read them and didn't know much about them. And it was amazing how many people stumbled over how to read them, and it just wasn't in them the same way it was in me. But the full entree into the world of comics and understanding everything they were and how many books there were and that it was a whole industry and a whole community was when I was in my teens, and I saw the X-Men animated show like everyone else. And my brothers came back from the mall. I think it was a couple weeks after we'd first seen the cartoon and fell in love with it. And we're like, what is this? It's amazing. And they brought back a couple X-Men comics because they recognized the characters from the cartoon. And that was it. I was hooked. I was done for. There was no slow burn towards wanting to do that for a living, because I had already wanted to be a writer since I was little, and sometimes wanted to be an artist too, but I think I didn't have the patience and the discipline for that I sort of needed to I don't think I had a lot of natural talent, like a tiny bit, and I wasn't really willing to do the work to turn that into something else that so many artists are willing to do. And so I immediately wanted to make comics. It was discovery and immediately creating my own characters and trying to tell my own stories and, becoming absolutely obsessed with it.
And, you're relatively, if you think about it, right, you're kind of still pretty young in your comics career in terms of.
I don't know how young I am, but yes, I haven't been in the industry as a working pro for that long. 2015 is when Gem was published. So
right.
It's only 6 years ago. And that was my first thing that actually saw print. I had started working in, I think, 2014. Meredith McLaren and I had pitched a graphic novel to, we pitched it to a couple places, but Dark Horse was the one who picked it up, Heart in a Box, which just recently got a second printing, new edition re-release. Very fun. Mm-hmm. Which could be deadly sometimes to have your first work reprinted, but I'm very fortunate that for whatever reason, that story, it really still works. I really still like it. And mostly that's down to Meredith being incredible and really bringing that vision to life in a amazing way. But yeah, I mean, Jem ended up getting printed because comics take so long. Meredith had to draw that book for like 2 years or something before it came out. So it ended up coming out in the same year as Jem in 2015. But I think Jem, which I had just started a few months before that, beat it to press. So that became my first sort of title. Although I did have a short in an anthology that was for charity that I did with the incredible Stephanie Hahn, because we were friends.
She's awesome.
Yeah,
she's so cool.
We were friends from she had done some work, or both my comics criticism stuff. We knew each other through that, and she had ended up doing covers and some illustrations for my prose novel, my first one, The Girl Who Would Be King. She did the cover to my second one as well, Story Killer, but that's sort of a different story. So yeah, I'm quite new in that sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the reason I say that is because like I'm a huge, like, not overall with sports, but a huge basketball fan. So consider somebody that's like even year 5, year 6 or whatever, I still consider them kind of young in their career. You know what I mean? So I think that's why I kind of do it with comics. Not to say that you haven't done a tremendous amount of work. You're not green by any means, like.
No, I just think I just object to young because I'm not that young in the industry. I mean, to stick with the basketball analogy, if someone my age was playing basketball, we'd all be laughing our asses off at them. We'd be like, get that person a walker. So, but yeah, no, I haven't been doing it that long. I've had an incredible amount of success very quickly. I think that's down to a lot of things. I think it's down to being lucky. I think it's down to me doing a few things right. I think it's I really, really care about comics, and I put sort of all of myself into everything I'm doing, whether it's the coolest project ever or something not so great. And I think that people can tell that. I definitely think my sort of passion is definitely one of those greatest strength, greatest weakness things, which is, it makes me someone good to work with because I really care about the final product. I put all of myself into it, but I expect others to do the same. And sometimes that passion for getting it right can be fucking annoying. So, sorry.
I mean, no, you can cuss. I cuss a lot. I cuss a lot. I think there's not one episode that's on this channel that doesn't have me cussing at least one time. So don't worry about that. Yeah, I think that your work, going back to, some of the stuff that I discovered with like Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, right? Or the Rogan Gambit series. Your passion, it just exudes from the pages, and I think that that's kind of why people are attached to your work and really love the stuff that you're putting out. And everything you've done so far, I've really dug. And I think that like Captain Marvel, full disclosure, I was not caught up at all. I plowed through every single issue over the last 3 days.
Oh wow!
I reread a little bit of what I had read from the beginning. I think I had read the first arc, but for whatever reason, I hadn't been reading it. And wow, so good. Carol has not necessarily been, I wouldn't say she's a favorite character of mine, but you are pushing her up there for me with the work that you're doing on that series. I think that she's just such a fun character to read about. I mean, you're really, taking what Kelly Sue DeConnick kind of laid the groundwork for and kind of elevating her to the upper echelon in Marvel, at least in my eyes, and I'm sure a lot of other people's eyes. And you're running with it. You're creating a fun superhero comic book that, while I wouldn't say like it doesn't take itself too seriously, but you honor the character and you treat her with the respect that I think she kind of deserves.
Thank you. That means a lot because I think our run with Carol has been pretty tricky, to be honest, because I feel like what Kelly Sue was doing, which is some of my favorite Carol Danvers stuff and always will be, I think, is that, Kelly Sue really came in and both got to and had to really push forward into sort of uncharted new territory. This was her first time with the Captain Marvel moniker. Like it really had to be sort of a switch, right, for Carol. And I think she did an incredible job of that. I think my directive was different. And I'm not saying Marvel didn't hand down an edict. It's just what I perceived as being the problems that I was going to face writing Carol, and the ways in which I thought it was important to sort of rehab her, not from Kelly Sue or any of the great people who've done her book in the intervening years, but she's been mishandled in events a few times. And that really, the problem with an event is a lot of people who don't know, it's supposed to be this great way to expose people to other characters and books that they're maybe not reading. And it works like a charm. I know for a fact it worked on me as a teenager, especially. But the problem is if maybe a character is sort of out of character or gets assigned a role that's maybe not completely accurate to who they are or a great look, then that tends to be all those people who don't typically read that character. It tends to be their take on that character now. And we had a lot of baggage from both Civil War I and II, where Carol was cast in a role that I don't think it didn't make sense for her. She has a military mindset. She's going to be more of the government, follow the rules type employee. So I don't think she was miscast. I just think the execution just wasn't great. It wasn't the priority. Like she wasn't a lead. She wasn't the thing that this was about, but she sort of became this poster girl that a lot of people had a problem with. And so I saw a lot of what I was doing when I came on in 2019. Well, I mean, that's what we released. We were working on it in 2018, but as sort of trying to get some people to give her a chance, to give people that already loved her a really great, really fun book, and to get people who had maybe written her off or not given her a chance, to give her some really great stories that would intrigue them and might bring them back. And I think we've been really successful in that. And I think that our high numbers, we're whatever, I'm working on 35 now, I think. 35, 31 just released last month. These are huge numbers for a modern book and for a Captain Marvel book. And so, we're really excited and proud of that. So I think our experiment really worked. But I do think as a result, even though I've tried all the time to give her the best stories I can, I think there's my approach is inherently safer than some of the stuff, like, for example, Kelly Sue was doing. And I think that's just because we had different goals,
Right.
So I think those are both really successful runs in funny ways when you look back that had different priorities. She had to carve a new path, and here I am trying to like straighten things up on the path, and make Carol sort of reliably great as she is, as others have sort of made her be. And I do think that I like to believe, when I'm flattering myself, that she was recently involved in the Empire arc that Al Ewing and Dan Slott were doing, or the Empire event. And
Right.
I thought she was really well handled there. I think that was a great change of pace for Carol in events. I think it was all down to Al and Dan being great and really liking Carol Danvers and using her well. But I like to pretend we played a part.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting that you bring up the way she was handled in events. And I would probably say I was one of those people that didn't necessarily care for the way she like the way she was portrayed, right? Like
I think there's a knee jerk to make her really military and on the government side, which is not very sympathetic place to come. And so if you're going to be in that place and you're going to come hardline, which I think is sometimes how she was written, it's not super relatable, or I don't know, positive is the right word, but it's not a very like friendly portrait.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely just makes you like, because like obviously as fans and as readers, we're gonna take sides, right? Especially
Yeah.
if it's heroes against heroes. Like I was clearly on Cap's side first go round, in Civil War, but I was definitely on Tony's side in the second one. So
And in both of those scenarios, you were against Carol, right? Yeah.
yeah. So
this is the thing. 2 times in these big events, she got put on sort of the quote unquote wrong side. I mean, everyone has a point in these scenarios. That's why it's interesting to watch these heroes have these complex disagreements. So I don't think anyone is 100% right or anyone is 100% wrong. But yeah, the person who's quote wrong and is going to be proven wrong, she was on the wrong side of that twice in 2 Civil War events. And I think that's hard. That can be hard to recover from. And I don't think anyone did it on purpose. I think there were much bigger pieces that were being moved around the board, and it just sort of happened. And it does make sense that she falls into those roles because of her sort of military approach. But I feel like that would sort of never happen to Steve. So
yeah, I mean, Steve constantly goes against the government. So I mean,
right. And I think that's fine, but I also think there's sometimes more care like put into, well, we better be careful because it's Steve Rogers. And I don't know that Carol has previously gotten that same sort of consideration. And I don't know. So I think we're over here trying to build her up back into, the strongest possible version of herself that other people can play with in a really great way. And again, I think it's down to Al and Dan being great and liking the character and having a good spot for her in their event. But it really warmed my heart to see her used really well there. It felt great. So I like to pretend we're part of it.
I'll co-sign that for sure. I mean, I think that, for me, I talked about this recently with my buddy on one of our episodes, like portrayal of characters and consistency, right? Like I hate when within even the same month or within a couple months, a character is portrayed one way and then not the same way in the next one. And it kind of takes you out of the story because you're like, well, that's not who that person is, right? Like you really become attached to these characters and thinking like, no, that they would never behave that way, and even though we get like it's different visions from different creators, still feel like there should be that cohesion between writers.
We ask a lot of this stuff. I mean, comics is this incredibly complex tapestry, and unlike a lot of other mediums, it moves very, very fast. Right. So it's sort of amazing what separate writers are able to do with the help of really great editors to like patch all that stuff together. But there are always going to be misses. I mean, I do it all the time. I mean, people guest star in my book and like, I just hope I got it right. Like, well, I didn't have time to read everything this character ever did, but here's what I feel the voice is from what I've read. Here's where I need them in this role. I mean, we all do it. We all do it because you got to move fast. So you just hope you get it as right as you can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and like I said, I said this when we started talking about Carol, you've really made me grow attached to her. And I feel like reading all 31 issues within such a span has really it really made it like I got like a clear vision of like how you perceive Carol and how you want Carol to be perceived by the readers. And you've really kind of humanized isn't the right word, but you've really made her a warmer character in my eyes.
Thank you.
Than I perceived her before. And the supporting cast, I mean, her interactions with Stephen Strange are hilarious. Rhodey, the relationship with Rhodey, I'm very excited for the current arc that's starting with issue 32, The Last Marvels. So I was you could kind of talk about a little bit about the arc, what we can expect from that story.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that's hard to talk about too much because I'm trying to remember which parts are which issues. I mean, one of the most fun things we're getting right off the bat is we're getting sort of the most Kamala that we've ever had in the book. I really only had her in one issue that was like a downtime issue where they ended up going to a escape room kind of thing. And it was very fun, and I had fun writing Kamala. She's an incredible character. She's a little for me, for my sort of style, she's a little overly earnest sometimes, which is why I'm maybe not a great fit for like a starring Kamala book. Like I shouldn't have the Ms. Marvel book. She's just too bright and earnest for me. And I love that about her, but that is like me writing a little bit outside my comfort zone, which is a little more cynical. I mean, listen, I did Kate Bishop, who is very bright and sunny and sassy and fun. So maybe I could figure it out, but it's a little outside my wheelhouse. But I will say, putting her in the Carol in Captain Marvel was so fun, not just because her power set is really fun for someone to write who's been writing flying brick photon blast power. You know, there's a lot of really fun stuff you can do with it. And she's a really great contrast to Carol because she just, yeah, that brightness and that earnestness and that sort of wise innocence is sort of similar to Carol, but different too. And so they're really fun together. I'm getting to write a few, yeah, see, I can't really give this away yet. So I think it starts really fast and furious, a lot like the last Avenger. I mean, obviously we're referencing that with Last of the Marvels, and we're seeing that suit again. So there's a lot of mystery between who's in these suits, why are they there, is Vox Supreme behind this again, or is this something else? It's very fast and furious, much like how Last Avenger started. I think, you know, that one, because of the way we started that, there was even some flashback stuff that sort of gives you a chance to catch up. But we don't even have that here. It's just sort of on the gas from go. And in 34, something really huge happens. That's a new thing for Carol that I think is going to sort of blow people's minds. And you'll see more of it in 35 and 36. And then what will it mean for the future? I think that's a really weird and interesting question that editor Sarah Brunstad and I are still figuring out. There's a lot of different directions it could go in issue 37, and I just want to pick the most interesting one. So,
all right. Well, I mean, I'm very excited to read this art.
It's a weird thing, and I think people's minds are going to be a little blown. I am playing with Carol's powers a little bit more. I don't know if that's because I'm trying to push her or just because I'm bored with photon blasts that come out of your fists, but the preview art for 32 has already showed her using photon blasts out of her eyes and also using it more as shield, which is something she's done, I think, a little bit, but she doesn't often do it. So we're already trying to play with her powers a little bit, which is going to set up some of the things that happen in 34, 35, and 36. So,
all right, cool. And, you know, one more thing about Captain Marvel, I just want to ask you, how far out do you have planned if, you know, if all goes according to your plan, right? And Marvel lets you keep doing your thing, which I'm pretty sure they will, because like I said, very few comics nowadays make it with to issue 30, let alone don't even make it past issue 6. So
yeah. Well, like I said, I'm writing 35 now. We'd all really like us to get to 50, I think. I think everyone would love that. And so that's what we're hoping for. But you know, the sales are good, but I don't think they're super strong enough that we're like, oh yeah, that's a foregone conclusion. Like we still got to fight for it every month. So I think that if things in this arc go well, if we get the boost that I think we're going to get from this weird development, I feel like we could probably get to 50. But yeah, I'm still honestly, like, unfortunately, because you can still get canceled at any time, I'm still, you know, keeping my cards kind of close. I'm not really, you know, I'd love to go, okay, this is what 37 through 50 is about and looks like, but it's still a little touch and go like that. I mean, I think the only book I know for sure that, you know, has been sort of given the rope to do that in recent years is you know, so the Hickman stuff with X-Men, obviously that was a really big slow burn development thing. I think Immortal Hulk,
oh yeah, for sure,
where it got. But I think that for us, we've been fighting a little more scrappily as we go, whereas Immortal Hulk had such incredible success and critical acclaim and sales early on, they were really able to say, okay, we're going to give you this many issues. And Al is such an incredible and thoughtful storyteller. I think that probably really benefited the kind of storyteller he is. We're still sort of scrapping arc to arc. Like, it's pretty hard to plan more than 2 arcs at a time for us. So, because we just don't know. So we'll see. I mean, we got a really big boost when we did Last Avenger. If that happens again, I feel pretty confident we'll get there, and maybe we can make slightly bolder moves because we know we're going to get it, but we'll see.
All right, cool. Well, I hope you get to that issue 50. I think I definitely want to see it. I'm sure everybody reading the book definitely wants to see it.
Yeah,
you took. Go
I
ahead.
think timing wise, I think it would work out to you'd hit issue 50 around the time the second movie comes out too. So that's nice.
Yep.
Of course, schedules aren't what they used to be now, but
Yeah, that's
could
true.
happen. Could happen.
And you mentioned something that was, kind of critically acclaimed with Al Ewing's Mortal Hulk. Well, something that's critically acclaimed, you just won an Eisner for it, your Black Widow run.
Yeah,
I
this is amazing.
absolutely, I was floored when I read that first issue. My buddy and I told him, I'm like, dude, you got to read it. You have to catch up. Up with every issue. I think issue 9 was the last one to come out. 10's coming out next week as of the day we're recording.
Yeah.
It is like what you're doing with Natasha. Amazing. The art on it has been phenomenal as well.
It's incredible.
I was so happy when I saw not only the nomination, but the win. Very well deserved. So
I was so happy we were nominated. I was completely shocked we won. We were the only sort of big 2 book in that category. So I thought for sure, one of those indies was going to have it, especially there were some really good books in that category. I was shocked, but I'm so glad. Listen, I'm very selfishly glad to have it, but part of me is really just glad Elena has it because she so deserves it for the work she's done. It's been a real labor of love. I do think that she and I together, I've talked about, something she and I do a lot in the book in every issue we have. And Raphael de la Tour has done it in his issues too. He's been quite a team player. We do at least one sort of DeLuca effect double page spread. They're not always true DeLuca effects, which is like where you have the same background, multiple figures moving through the scene, and usually no panels or few panels. It's usually one shot. And we do something like that or similar to that in every issue. And, I think I love the DeLuca effect and I write it into almost everything that I do. But I think, and one of my favorite things about writing that into things is seeing the different ways artists interpret it, because everyone has a different approach. And I've liked them all. Some I've liked more than others, but I think Elena really tapped into it more than anyone I've ever worked with. And it helped become this visual identity for the book that I think just sort of took it to the next level. And then she's really great at the emotional stuff too, which obviously, especially that first arc had a lot of emotional underpinning. And, I just wanted to do something with Natasha that I hadn't really seen before. I'd seen a lot of Red Room stories. I'd seen a lot of her being a badass. I'd seen a lot of her, being a great team player, a lot of her, a ballerina, all these things. Right. But I wanted something that was going to really fundamentally change her inside without having to change her into being, oh, she's a mom now and that's going to be her new life, because we knew that wasn't going to be a fit for where the Black Widow character should go at this point in time, or even what Marvel was going to want to do with her. So I had to find a way, like, what can be a thing that would be so important to you and fundamentally change you as a person, even if you have to go back to your old life. And that was sort of where that idea came from. And man, I think with Elena's help, we really nailed it. And I feel very proud of it. And I think we really brought new dimensions to Black Widow that I feel really great about. I love that book. Jordi Belair, can't, I would say that was the most fucking disappointing thing about the Eisners is I don't know why Jordy's name isn't on that trophy. Like, I guess you could make an argument that not every colorist on every book is as important as Jordy Belair is on Black Widow, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think we're winning an Eisner without Jordy Belair on that book. And so it's very painful to me that it's just Elena and I getting trophies when it takes a village to make a book that good, and we have an incredible village. So
yeah, I mean, I've been championing for colorists for the longest time now. I mean, I think editors as well don't really get the shine that they should get, because you can tell when a book is edited for sure. Like, I can tell.
I actually completely agree with that, especially because what happens with editors, unfortunately, is they get none of the credit and all of the blame when things go wrong. And that sucks.
Yeah, well, I equally give blame and credit if something is good. I have no problem doing it. You know, I think I started following like editors to books even at a young age, because, you know, like when I'm into something, I'm obsessively into it. So I looked at colorist names, I looked at letterers names, I would recognize stuff, and I looked at editors in Vertigo. Shelley Bond, Karen Berger were two of the editors that always really stood out to me, and I followed them to projects. Especially if I didn't know the creatives attached, I would follow the editor's name. And so like I definitely see it a lot with I hate to say it with like Marvel and DC. I mean, it's every publisher can have this problem, but I notice it sometimes more so with Marvel and DC with editing. But this, like, you have great editing on Captain Marvel, and you got great editing on Black Widow, because Black Widow is, to me, it's top three favorite Marvel comics coming out, hands down. I mean, it is just,
oh man, that's so nice to hear.
It's so good.
Let's since we're here, let's give credit. Sarah Brunstad edits both those books, and she wasn't there for the whole time, but Kat Grigorowitz she's the assistant editor, and until very recently Will Moss was the supervising editor on all of that, and they are an incredible team. They're fantastic, and I also really want to give credit to them for letting me push Black Widow in a direction that we all know was risky. I mean, it's still risky even now. We're doing this arc with Apogee, and, you know, all these things we were setting up, you know, we had some limitations because of how we had to break the art up a little bit. But, you know, we're doing a little less traditional format over there than usual. I mean, you're still getting these incredible action spreads in every issue, which I think is part of the superhero comics formula, right? X number of pages of fighting in every issue. You know, you try to end with some kind of intriguing cliffhanger of some kind. Like, there's a definite formula to comics, and Captain Marvel follows the formula very closely. It's a very traditional book. Black Widow breaks out of the formula, especially now out of the first arc, and it's risky. I think for some people it's working really, really well, and they're intrigued by the fact that it's a little less paint by numbers. And some people it doesn't quite work for, because, you know, they're like, well, I didn't get to spend enough time with this villain or whatever. And I'm like, well, that villain's not really going away, and there's more than meets the eye there. You know, there's this incredible Adam Hughes cover came out that looks like a flashback Natasha that's going to be for issue 13. I don't really want to spoil what that is, but yeah, I mean, 11 is a sort of standalone story that sets up the next arc. And so 12 is the first issue of that new arc. And then 13 is a crazy, wild side journey. So, you know, I don't know, we're trying to push on boundaries a little bit here. I think it's some of what made the book stand out in the first place, along with Elena's art, Jordy's colors, and, you know, some real emotional storytelling work for Black Widow. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I want to believe that the formula can be broken a little bit and a better book made out of it. And not that every book should break the formula, but, you know, I just like to play with things a little bit, and it's been fun on Black Widow.
I mean, I'm going to say again, you're killing it. I mean, I'm killing it. The book is just, I look for, like, I judge my book, my pull list, if I'm going to like take stuff off or whatever, like wait for a trade. If it goes to the top of my pile when I bring my books home, that's a keeper. Black Widow is always at the top of my pile, whether it's the first or second or third, because I get a lot of books every week. I'm blown away every issue. You won my faith over after I think the double page spread. I was like, I'm here. She can do whatever the hell she wants. I'm down for that.
In the first issue, you mean?
In the first issue.
The hallway? Yeah.
Yes. It was just phenomenal.
Elena and I had never worked together before when we started doing this book. I mean, I had seen her work and I was like, yes, this is what we want to do. This is the vibe. This is right. But, you never know when you're writing that script, like,
hello?
I mean, a lot of times when teams don't work, it doesn't mean anyone on the team is bad. It just means it doesn't quite blend together the right way, like maybe the personalities are a little off, or maybe just the working styles are a little different, or the communication, and so I wrote that DeLuca hallway double page spread in there for these pages 2 and 3. And I was like, here we go. Like, I hope this is going to work. And when she sent those first pages in, I think it was layouts first, and it was incredible. I was like, oh, this could be really cool. And then when she sent in the pencils, I was like, oh, we're fine. Like, this is amazing. This is going to work. And I'm really excited about where we're going to go,
Yeah. And another side note, Bucky and Clint, Hawkeye, I love the way you write them. It's very few people in my eyes, like from what I've read, that can write Bucky to where I enjoy it and I'm not just turned off by it. And the relationship between those two, like I'm hoping that maybe somewhere down the line you could fit it in your schedule. Maybe you do a mini series with those two, because I just love your depiction of them. And I think that you having them in that first arc with Natasha was so fitting, and while you did stuff new and fresh, you also gave us a little bit of the familiar, a little bit of maybe not something I expected, but something that just felt like it needed to be there.
Yeah. No, she needed the people that she could trust and the people that were most important to her around her in that first arc. And I thought it was great that they were the ones who came looking for her. We had a little bit of a problem because I love Matt Rosenberg's Tales of Suspense that he did with those two, where they were looking for Black Widow. And I was like, fuck, I don't know if I can just have them doing that again. And I'm like, you know what, we'll just lean into it. We'll just have them make a joke about, like, didn't we just do this? And then I think the rest of the story was, different enough that it was okay. But yeah, it was really important to get them in there for this like pivotal thing that was happening to her. They needed to see it happen to their friend. They needed to help her clean it up, they'll be back in issue 12. I think they won't be in 13, but they'll be 12, 14, and 15 helping Natasha. I mean, we tried to let Natasha sort of build her own little thing, and she's still got that, but those are her people. Like, when you need help, those are the guys you call, and they come for her because she means more to them than anything. And I love that. I do think it's a very complicated thing. Like, part of me wants to get her slowly re-involved in a relationship as she heals from this family thing with one of them. But how do you choose? They both bring out such different things in her. I think she's, Bucky sort of gets her on a level that almost nobody else can. At the same time, Clint draws out the lighter side of her, the funnier, more ridiculous, happier even side. Like, she and Bucky are more shared trauma and, like, that understanding that they have together. And so I don't think either one of those is quite right for any of them, And also, by the way, if I do it, I can't win with any of the fans because, it's like if you finally give the Clint Natasha fans what they want, the Bucky fans are bitterly disappointed. And if you do the reverse, it's the reverse. And it's really sad, honestly, because I feel a little responsible. I feel a little bit of burden or something about what to do there, because I've sort of listened to the fans a little, like I've let them get in my head and now I don't want to disappoint anyone. And so it's affecting my story choices a little bit, which is not ideal. So I
think
don't know.
you should just do whatever you feel is right, you know, like, and that's how we're gonna get the best story, because I love both of those characters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Too.
Like Clint
Me too.
and Bucky are two of my favorite Marvel characters of all time. Like anytime a book with them in it comes out, I will buy it. So
Yeah.
if she's with either one of them, I don't think I'll be disappointed. You know what I mean? So
Well,
and even if
unfortunately, you're the rare fan. Most people split into two camps, and it's like
yeah.
I made them both angry in the first arc by not having her with either of them. But I feel like by the end of the arc, people felt like I'd given her moments with Clint and Bucky that that resonated and that were important and that showed sort of the truth of those relationships. But yeah, no, I mean, they talk about this, you know, a lot of writers talk about this, that like you can't listen to the audience because, you know, you need to tell your story, and the audience doesn't really, it knows what it thinks it wants, but it doesn't know what it needs. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But yeah, I let this one get in my head a little bit, and I feel conflicted now. And I'm having trouble pulling the trigger in one direction or another.
Well, like I said, you got my faith. I'm sure you'll
Thank you.
great story. You know, like you've really made Natasha. I thought nobody would ever top Mark Waid and Chris Samnee's Black Widow book, right? And
I loved that one.
You are like, it's like neck and neck right now. Pick one over the other because they're two very different stories.
Yeah.
What you're doing with Natasha, and I will use the term humanized because, you know, she's an assassin, she's a spy, right? She's not, you don't ever see her vulnerable. It's rare if you see that in her, I feel like, in stories that I've read. And this might be the most vulnerable I've ever seen her. What is to her in the first arc? I don't want to necessarily spoil how you close out the first arc for people that maybe haven't read it yet. Shame on you if you haven't. Go pick it up. But I mean, it's amazing. And then the supporting cast you've brought in, Yelena and Anya, the former Spider Girl. I'm digging what's going on. We have a new character that's kind of like a sidekick. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about how important that was for you to have the supporting cast that you have introduced instead of just going with, you know, Bucky and Clint or somebody that people might have expected, like, oh, that's going to be the co-star of the book.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that my favorite takes on Natasha are ones that are less sassy and quippy and chatty. Like, I feel like she's a quiet character. It's not that she doesn't have a sense of humor. It's not that she's not funny, but she just plays her cards close. You know, she's a spy. She can't turn that off in any scenario, you know, you're assessing. And so even I knew we could be in her head, and I knew we would be in her head a little bit, but even in her head, I feel like she's not, you know, she's not running her mouth. She's like making assessments even in her head. And so to me, it was really important that she have some supporting characters she could bounce off of. I think the Lucy of it all, the new character, is very much a Natasha having a lot of somewhat maternal feelings that were stirred up because of the first arc and then sort of abruptly cut off. And so here she is trying to help someone through a really trying time in an almost motherly way. I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you. I don't want to lock you into this world. Whereas Yelena is just approaching Lucy more as, you know, yeah, she wants to help that kid, but she's not seeing sort of all the nuances. Like, I mean, I think Natasha is almost projecting on Lucy a little bit, like, well, if this was my kid, you know, I wouldn't want her involved in this stuff. I would want her to go live her life and have something different, you know? Right. So the events of 10 are going to shake up how much that can or can't work for Lucy and for Natasha, but it's definitely, that relationship has definitely been a little bit of a metaphor for the family that she lost and her sort of building another one. But it's just important to have those characters around for contrast, because you have to draw some of this stuff out of her. She's not going to volunteer it. So having Yelena around allows for this fun sort of push and pull of their dynamic, which is a little weird, but I really like. And, you know, for Yelena to really know what she's lost and to sort of be frustrated with her, but treating her with kid gloves at the same time to sort of draw out her trauma and help her heal from this. I think it was important that Bucky and Clint leave because of what she needed to do in her life to like rebuild and move forward without leaning too heavily on one of them. But it's important they come back too, because they're her world, like they're her people. And Anya was she was a fun bomb to sort of drop in there. We needed a little bit of levity. I needed someone who could work undercover, but who was going to like really fall in line and follow Natasha. And that's sort of how she got involved. And then Anya and Lucy have become sort of fun together a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, it's such a unique book in terms of like the overall Marvel line. It's not, and these are the books I like the most, the ones that aren't heavily like entrenched in like event crossovers or, you know, what have you. Like even the Captain Marvel book, you know, throughout your run only had a little bit of a time with an event, but for the part, it's allowed to breathe and be its own thing. And that's what I think Black Widow is for sure. And that's why I gravitate to books like that. I gravitate to books like Immortal Hulk, Zdarsky's Daredevil. So I'm very, very stoked that this book is even in existence. You know, like Black Widow, my friend told me, he's like, he never thought that he would really dig a Black Widow book. Black Widow's not necessarily one of his favorite characters. I've liked Natasha for a while, with, you know, whether she's been on the Avengers or whether it was a Mark Waid and Saw Me. And I think that you are making a lot of new Black Widow fans with what you and Elena and the rest of the creative team are doing.
Thank you. I hope so. That's really what we always want, you know?
Yeah. So I was just wondering, I mean, like you said, like it's more of a more scrappy, right? In terms of like Captain Marvel, but the response to Black Widow in terms of sales, how has that been, and how is that influencing maybe where you want to take Natasha with your overall story and what your goals are with the character?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, like Captain Marvel, I don't know how much more runway we have, despite an Eisner win and the critical acclaim and the really good word of mouth. I think we're still lower than I'd like to be numbers wise, month to month. So, you know, we're approved through 15 right now. We're talking about what 16 to 20 might look like, but you know, I think it's still a question mark. Like, if I have a really, really big idea, that probably helps us, you know, keep going. But it's still a question mark, to be honest. I mean,
okay, all right. Well, I mean, I hope that it sticks around for a while, because
I hope so too. There's a lot of stuff I'd love to do with her. I mean, one of the things we set up in the early in that first arc is that Viper is working on something that she specifically wanted Black Widow out of the way for. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great tease of like, well, what exactly is that? What's that big story? You know, how does that affect Natasha? What can she do to stop whatever that thing is? I think there's something really great there. I don't know if we'll get there. That could be 16 through 20 maybe, but I mean, we're still figuring it out.
Okay, well, I mean, anybody listening, make sure you're going and picking up the book, support the book, because it is one of Marvel's best and it deserves it. And I want to see it go for a lot longer than 15 issues.
Me too.
Something else that you were announced recently to be a part of is the Amazing Spider-Man, the Beyond initiative that's coming out. You're one of the writers on that team. You're no stranger to being on a writing team. You did that with Uncanny Avengers a few years ago, the pre-Hickman era. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about, you know, how you got involved with this, and maybe a little bit of what we can expect from your work in the stories.
Yeah, this is a really cool thing. Obviously, Spider-Man is sort of the brass ring, so it's really fun to get to play in that world. I think the team that's put together is really incredible. Zeb Wells is sort of our fearless leader, along with Nick Lowe, obviously the Spider-Man editor. He's also got Cody Zigler, who I believe worked in, I think he worked in one of the TV rooms with Zeb, the TV writers rooms for one of the shows. And he's pretty new to comics, but he's like a super fan. I mean, it's not like one of those things where someone doesn't know how to write comics and they're suddenly ported in. Like, he's very into it. He's been so supportive of Black Widow. It's been amazing. And then Pat Gleason, who's an incredible artist, but also a very strong writer. He's involved both as an artist and a writer. And then Saladin Ahmed, who, you know, is incredible and does the Miles Morales book. So it's really just an incredible team. It was awesome to be in that sort of mini writer's room, planning that stuff out. It was especially great for me because even though I got to add to it and be a part of it and help shape it, all the heavy lifting had to go to Zeb. So that was great. He had to do all the outline work, and all the horrible stuff. And so, yeah, I was able to just come in and I wrote, my issues are 77 and 78 with Sara Pichelli drawing. Incredible. So excited. And then I have a short in 75. A couple of us do, I think, that sets some things up. And that's like an oversized first issue that they're doing. And then I'm writing 2 or 3 on the back end as well. And one shot that ties in, I think. They've got this Daughters of the Dragon are sort of involved in the arc, which I'm a big fan of those characters. And I just read the script last night for Jeb McKay has a one shot with them that ties in, and it's so clever and cool. And I'm a little angry that it's so good. But it's been really fun. I mean, we've got Ben Reilly is sort of a big part of this, as is the Beyond Corporation, which is a conceit I'm a big fan of because Next Wave is one of my favorite comics of all time.
Yeah, I love that book.
And I think how we're mixing Beyond with the Spider-Man mythos is really fun. And I don't know. I think it's a really great story. I know people are super skeptical because they get very anxious anytime it doesn't seem like traditional meat and potatoes Spider-Man, but Peter Parker Spider-Man, I should say. But I mean, I think that's how you get some of the best stories, are that when you shake things up and like see what comes out, like what are the emotional through lines of things being difficult and facing new challenges. And I don't know, I think people are a little wrong-headed about it, who are worried about what it means for Peter Parker. Peter Parker's Peter Parker, like he's irreplaceable. It doesn't mean there isn't a really great story here about Peter and Ben and Beyond and all these other things. It's really exciting stuff. And I think I've read all the scripts through 80 at this point, and they're bang on, man. They're really good. It's one of those things where you turn your script in and you're like, oh yeah, I'm happy about it, I did good. And then you read someone else's and you're like, crap, is mine as good as that one? I don't know. It's really good. Like it creates that kind of positive competitiveness, right? Where everyone's really doing their best because they want to have the best book and they want to show off what they can bring to it. And it's been really fun so far. Zeb is a very gracious and magnanimous leader, and very, very funny. In fact, I just had to write in a Slack that we have, a work Slack. I guess there's I think it's an 8 to 10 page short in, I want to say it's issue 74, setting up the new thing. And I was very skeptical about it. Like, I don't think I said anything because, you know, you don't want to throw water on someone's idea, but I was like, I feel like they're forcing this in there. I don't know. It feels sort of last minute. Maybe you're not going to like it. And I read it last night. It's fucking great. It really lands. It really works. And I feel like such a dick for being skeptical about it because it totally works. And, you know, not that I should not ever be skeptical, but everything that this team has shown me so far is like a really high quality level. So I don't know why I was skeptical, because it was great. It really landed. set things up in a really great way and added to everything we're doing, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters, and I am very critical and have been of the Spider-Man books for the better part, probably 10 years, right? Like there's hits and there's misses in my eyes, like just as a fan. I'm not trying to throw shade at any of the creators attached to the book over the past 10 years, but I feel a certain type of way, right? Like everybody certain type of way about the characters that they like and that they love.
No, I get you.
I'm one of them. And so I heard Nick Spencer was leaving the book, and I'm like, oh fuck, what's and then I saw my buddy, he does the Amazing Spider Talk podcast, and I was at work and he texted me the images of Beyond, of like teasers. And I'm like, oh shit. Like what's happening? And they didn't even announce the creators attached. But once Saladin Ahmed, Patrick Gleason, Zeb Wells, and the rest of the crew were announced, I'm like, okay, all right, this is good. I think this is gonna be good. I'll judge it after. I'm not gonna sit here for the next few months and be like, oh man, what's this gonna be? What is it gonna suck? Now you kind of already just said that you're on the back end, right? Writing some stories. So that to me, and that was kind of already my thinking, was that this is a finite thing, that this is not that permanent, right? Like this is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the plans are for when we exit, but the Beyond arc has a specific beginning and end.
Right.
And the beginning is 75. Well, now it's a short in 74, I guess, that kicks things off. But and in really, they had a free comic book day short as well. So I guess that's technically the beginning. But so 75 through whatever I don't remember what the number is that we end on. I also don't know if I'm supposed to say, so that's convenient. But
yeah, you don't have
to. But yeah, no, we're not on it indefinitely, and I don't know what their plans are specifically after that. If people are staying on or new people are like, that's above my pay grade of what that goes. But like, I have 2 issues at the front of this specific story, and then I have 2 or 3 toward the back end, and yeah, this story has a definitive ending and a change in status from where it was at 75. Yeah, I mean, I think any good story has that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited about the book. I've always liked Ben Reilly, so, and the Clone Wars is, you can say what you will about the Clone Saga. I'm sorry, about the Clone Saga and stuff like that. But whatever. Like I'm intrigued.
I will say, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but it's not despite being a Ben Reilly, like him being one of the lead parts of this story, it's not a clone shenanigans story. Like, okay. Ben is there. Ben is a huge part of it. Ben is a clone. We all know this, but it's not going to be loaded down with clone stuff. I mean, it was one of the first things we talked about in the room was, we're doing a Ben Reilly and Peter Parker story. Let's not put any other clone crap in there. Like, we don't need to rehash stories that are both great, but then also sometimes overstay their welcome. Like, let's do something new. So it's cutting a very new path that is not going to be, clone conspiracy redux type stuff. That's not what it is.
Okay.
And I think everybody should be excited, because I think these are the kind of stories that are exciting, because they break new ground and they try to show you new things about characters you've known and that we all know in any kind of ongoing capacity. It's easy to stagnate. I mean, it's really hard to tell an ongoing comic story that lasts for hundreds and hundreds of issues and still make things new again and interesting again and bring new dimensions. It's incredibly difficult to do. But I'm really proud of what we've put together, and I think it is new and different, and I think it's very high quality. I know this is what we're locked into as comics fans, this sort of solicits and teasers and PR pieces that get people all riled up, and it's like, people being riled up is sort of a good thing, because then at least they're talking about it. But it's very easy to get overwhelmed with what often happens, which I think is really negative.
Yeah.
Really negative. I'm not going to read this. I'm not going to, like, just give it a try at least. Like, I mean, if you don't want to read it after 75 because you hate the ideas or you think the quality isn't right, then okay, fair enough. I don't think that's what's going to happen to people who try it. I think they're going to be impressed. I think they're going to be excited. I think they're going to be like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. But I don't know. People acting like we're killing Peter Parker and he's never going to live again, or, assuming that that's what happens. Based on what? Based on a couple teaser images
Yeah.
and the fact that Ben is involved in the story? It's ridiculous. I don't know.
Yeah, my only theory, when it was announced, then I saw what the schedule was. I just figured, and you don't have to like say whether you know this or you don't, but I'm like, oh, okay, so this is leading us to what will be issue 900. So this is going to be the story from now until we get the legacy numbering of 900, and this will go into that kind of next era of whatever we're going to get. And I feel like it's
I mean, that makes sense. I don't know. I don't pay that much attention to the numbering. I always am caught unawares when people are like, oh, this is legacy issue 50, and I'm like, huh, it's issue 10. I don't know what you're I don't super pay attention to that stuff just because I've got other things I'm worrying about. But yeah, I understand that. But I mean, that should doesn't that make people feel better then, to be like, okay, this is a thing leading to another thing? Like, shouldn't that calm some of the histrionics about, Peter Parker
if anything
being dead forever? Or
if anything, it just makes me excited because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, exactly.
A story which we don't often get in old comics. We so often, especially with like, you look at like whatever, Action Comics, Detective Comics, like those large numbers, right? Like, it's just constantly going. So is there ever really a beginning, middle, and an end? Not really. You know what I mean? Like, you get these in between stuff. Like, we had it with Superior Spider-Man. That was kind of a beginning, middle, and end to that whole, like, that story that Dan Slott did. So while it fit into the overall narrative and history of the character and the book, we did get a definitive story. And I feel like that's what I'm kind of excited for with this Beyond stuff. And I always like shakeups. I'm one of those fans that's like, I want to see somebody on the book, or I want to see what these creators do, given the chance to write the book. And I'm super stoked. I can't wait to see what you guys got cooking up behind the scenes right now.
Yeah, listen, not everybody's going to like it. People aren't a hive mind. Even Peter Parker fans aren't a hive mind. So, not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to love it. But I think a lot of people are really going to be impressed with it. I think the writing and the art are completely on point. I think the writer's room, from day one, we had really good ideas and a clear narrative and a really great plan, and it got fleshed out as we went, and some unexpected things happened and we leaned into them, and I think it's going to be awesome. I think I'm really excited. I'm truly excited that this is sort of, I guess it's not my complete first foray into Spider-Man, because I wrote a short in that Spider-Man Full Circle.
Right.
And I did get to write him briefly in Jessica Jones in like a little cameo role. But I'm very excited to be a part of this as my contribution to Spider-Man lore thus far. So.
Yeah, I can't wait. I know I've been talking about it a lot. I work at a comic shop right now, and constantly, certain customers I'll chat up about Spider-Man, and we've been talking about this and kind of like speculating in terms of what's going to happen, but there's no negativity in those conversations, because it sounds cool. It sounds like this is going to be something different that we haven't got, and we're here for it. And I can't wait for it to come out and be able to read it. And like maybe in middle of the thing, maybe I'd love to chat with you again to kind of like
I'd love to. Here's a thing that I always try to remember for myself as both a writer and as a reader and fan. But remember years ago when Scott Snyder was doing Batman or in the early days, like the Black Mirror.
Oh
And
yeah.
that was Dick in the Batman role. And when they first announced that, and I can't remember if I knew Scott was attached or not, but I remember being like, ugh. I was like, I love Dick Grayson, but I love Dick Grayson as Nightwing. I want Bruce Wayne in the Bat costume. That's what I want. That's what I'm reading for. That's what I'm here for. And I was really negative about it, like in my own head. Like, I mean, I wasn't like going on forums and yelling at anyone or anything, but I was like, fuck this. Like, I don't know. I'm not interested. Literally to this day, it's one of my favorite Batman stories, Scott Snyder's Black Mirror stuff with Dick Grayson in the cowl.
Same.
And if I had written it off before I even tried it, I wouldn't have that incredible experience of this book that I love, that I revisit all the time, that sits on my shelf. That's one of my favorite fucking Batman stories. And so I just think we do ourselves a disservice. And I'm not trying to be judgmental. I did it too. But once you have that moment where you're like, oh shit, I almost missed out on this because I just closed myself off to it before it even started. I feel like once you have that moment, you have to keep that moment with you and remind yourself to not keep doing that, because it just blocks us from being open to new things, you know? And who knows what you might miss in that process, you know?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've often said Black Mirror is one of my favorite Batman stories as well. And I was angrier that Bruce came back and time under the cowl, especially after that. You know, I feel like Scott Snyder really had a lot more stories to tell with Dick Grayson in that role. I think we got something fresh, right? We got a Batman that wasn't weighted down with this like anger and this like, you know, just this ominous presence. We had a Batman that was kind of smiling. You know what I mean? Like even Gordon would comment on that.
Yeah.
Like,
we also got, and as I say this, I want to say I like dickish Batman. Like that totally works for me. I have no issues with that. He's a dick, and he sort of it should be.
Right.
But another thing we got along with that incredible Black Mirror volume was the incredible Batman Dick Grayson plus Damian Wayne Robin. It was so good. It was so perfect. It was such like a beautiful merging of some characters that you sort of never would have expected. It was so well done. I loved it so much. And I never in a million years would have been like, oh, do we have to have Bruce back? Like, because I just never would have thought I'd feel that way. But I did at the end. Like, they really did an incredible job. So.
Agreed. And you know, like we talked about all the stuff that you got in the works. We talked about one of the projects you got coming up, but before I let you go, I was just wondering if you could maybe talk about or tease anything else you have in the works, if you do.
Unfortunately, I've got a Jeff the Land Shark thing coming, but they haven't told me when that is actually happening yet. I think it's going to be in the fall, but I think the pieces are still moving around a little bit. It's not a traditional comic book. It's something a little different, but I think people are going to love it. It's really amazing. I did a little one image promo of it like back in January, and it's Guri Hiru art. So it's adorable. It's really fun. My only wish is that we all could have had it last year when things were even more grim, although they're looking pretty grim now. So let's, it's still good. We're going to have it. Cause it's just a little bit of lightness, you know?
Yeah.
But the other thing that's developing or that's building for me with Marvel, I can't really talk about. So, so I can't say, but there is something I'm working on that is pretty cool and exciting. I think it will be out. If things go as planned, I think probably spring of 2020 is when that will start releasing. So
all right, cool. Well, I'm definitely excited to see what else you got in the works, and I'm loving everything you're doing right now, and I can't wait for the next. I can't wait for Wednesday so I can read Black Widow 10. I'm super stoked for that one, and the new Captain Marvel arc, Spider-Man Beyond. And I just want to thank you again for you know, taking time to chat with me. It's been a blast talking comics with you. And you know, before I let you go, if you could just, you know, real quick, tell everyone where we can find you online, and I'm going to drop all those links down below.
Sure. So I'm on Twitter at It's at 79 semifinalist. That's probably the best place to reach me. Oh, although I'm on Substack now. I've got a newsletter. So yeah, do that. Sign up for that. It's a free newsletter. It's 1979 semifinalist.substack.com. I've been doing it for a few months. I think we're on letter 11 or 12 or something, but it's a great place to see what books are coming out. I talk about, just stuff that I'm working on. I've done some cool process posts that people really like. And I sometimes give away codes to my store on there. And yeah, I talk also stupid stuff like pictures of my cats and here's what I'm watching, the good stuff.
Okay. Awesome. Well, again, thank you. And I definitely want to chat with you again in the future when we can talk about some of the projects that we can talk about today.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much.